Somebody smashed our mailbox.
What are you going to do about it?
We're going to fix it.
Timber framing?
Timber framing.
Here's the money that I owe you. Yes, you can pay the bills. I will give you more when I get paid again. I hate those people who love to tell you money is the root of all the kills. They have never been poor, they have never had the joy of a welfare Christmas. Yeah.
So when I woke up this morning, the last thing I thought I'd be doing would be timber framing, but there's a need. So back to basics is on hold until I get the mailbox going. I don't want to upset our mailman. We have a good mailman and keep that relationship going. So I've got a small metal detector here. This is one we got for Jack that I'll use, and we'll sweep this really quick. These timbers, timbers are two rough cut 6x6 timbers dug for one that I've milled here for my own property. They've been weathered, they're sitting outside. They were kind of some rejects that I set aside because they weren't up to the standard of what I typically like to work with, but they're really going to be just fine for this. But before we, I don't like to work on this old weathered wood. It's rough cut, sawn. Ooh, see, it's got slivers in it there. Rough cut, very rough cut, crude finish, and I like to work with smooth finishes. It makes it a lot easier for marking and layout. So I'm going to sweep it with a metal detector, make sure that there's no steel in it, and then we'll plane this down. So to make our timber framed mailbox, we're going to need 3 timbers: a 6x6, a 4x6, and a 2x6, possibly 2x8. So we'll start with the 6x6, 7 feet long. So I can see here that this one is overcut. So this is 6.5 by 6 3/8. So we can plane that down. I don't have to take it all the way down to the 6. We'll just get it kind of close enough because it's a kind of a standalone piece. But let's plane this down, and you're really going to see some beautiful wood come out of this. I guarantee it.
I will buy you a garden where your flowers can bloom. I will buy you a new car, perfect, shiny and new. I will buy you that big house way up in the West Hills. I will buy you a new life. Oh yes, I will.
So that's 2 sides done. So again, there'll be 3 pieces in this design. We're going to prepare all the timbers first. And again, I think I said this is going to be the 6x6. So we'll get this squared off and then cut to length. So that looks a lot better. I hate to work on that old grayed up timber. You know, it's always just takes a little bit of time to clean it all up. Much nicer to work in, and when we're doing a layout here, of course, it's a lot easier. Your lines are going to show up much better. So as you can see, this is a pretty rough piece. We've got some pitch pockets in here. We've got certainly some big old knots. We've got some checking and cracking and hollows in there. That's why it was rejected, but this will be just fine for what we're doing. We're not building a piano here, but I do want to have things pretty square where the joinery is going to be. And let's take a look and see how bad it is. So we're going to take one side and use as our control, meaning the point where all of the measurements are going to be taken off of. And I'll do kind of a sunburst thing there, something there to remind me that that's my control. And I could tell just by looking at this that it's not square. We don't need to square the whole thing, But we do want to square it where our joinery is going to be. So if we take this here, let's take a look and see what we got there. Okay, we can see that we're good 3/16 out on that side to the bottom. And over here, not too bad. What we got there? Probably an 1/8 or so. So what we'll do is we'll get the planer and we'll plane this back here down on this side, and then here a little bit right there, just back enough to where we can get clear of our joinery. Now, some people are going to say, I know it's going to come up, why don't you use pressure treated wood? I mean, it's going to be ground contact. Pressure treated wood is it's really crummy wood. It's the lowest grade wood that there is. It's not very nice to work with. I don't like working with all the chemicals in it. I would rather, I'm going for size. This is going to be big enough that it'll last, well, I'll last until I'm ready for a new one, until I'm bored of it, even though it is ground contact. This old Doug fir, actually, they used to make fence posts out of it here, and it lasts next to cedar, western red cedar, really good. So I don't care about that. I would rather do this 3 times than to do it once with that crummy pressure treated wood. So that's the reason why. So here's our control side, so we can look at that and see that it's not perfect, but it's a lot better. I can work with that. Get that diamond shape out of there. So let's hit the other side, and then we'll be ready to start cutting it to length. So we want this first leg at 7 feet. That'll give us 2.5 feet on the ground, and the other rest should be adequate. So this will be I'm going to pick the nicest end of the wood here for my joinery that I'm free from knots. This is a pretty nice, not a bad, the upper section here is actually pretty good. And because it's going to be sitting exposed to the weather, and the rain will be coming in the end grain, that's pretty hard on them, I'm going to cut a little angle on that, like a shed roof. It'll shed some of that water off there. So not very much, don't need very much, just a little bit. And also I can treat it with something, a waterproof or sealant of some sort that's going to give it a nice, it's going to protect it from where it's most vulnerable on that end grain. So this is the section of the timber that's going to be sticking out of the ground, and so I want to put that little angle on there to shed that water off there. So this is all personal preference, whatever you like. I think for the 6-inch material, the 2 inches, got the 2 inches marked there, that offset will be probably about right there. So I can just connect these, and I'm just going to put this here to be a saw guide. I can kind of follow it as I cut this with the saw. And that there will be my angle, just like that. Here we can do the same thing on the other side. Oh, it's nice to have a square end to work with. That's the nice thing about these timber framing projects is that, you know, even if you mill the stuff yourself, like this here was milled with my chainsaw mill. Actually, I think this is one of the first ones that I did, and the first ones I did weren't real great. You know, your timbers are only good as your setup, and I had a little bit to learn. I've since learned better ways to do it. But even so, it doesn't mean that it's not a usable timber, and there's no sense of of trying to go through all the time and effort to square the whole thing when the majority of it's going to be in the ground. It just won't matter as long as your joinery is good. That's the only thing that matters. That's why the old timers, when they timber framed, they would always, if they had one that was 6 1/4 and one that was 6, they would match the outsides, and then they would make up the difference, the overlap on the inside where you didn't really notice it. That way your siding, you didn't have problems with your siding and all that, but it's okay. You don't have to worry about it too much. So let's go ahead and cut this, and then we'll cut it to length, and then we'll see how we're going to get a 4x6 out of that next one.